So far we have completed the first two steps to implement the status drop-down list in a template-driven form. In the first step, we defined the status data. In the second step, we displayed the status drop-down list. The next step is to implement mandatory field validation for the status drop-down list. I would recommend to view the previous 3 videos in this course series to have proper continuity on what is going to be explained in this video. Let us get started with the implementation of mandatory field validation for the status drop-down list. In app.component.html, in the select tag, I am including required attribute which helps to indicate that this select element is a mandatory field. Within the select tag, I am including an option tag as the first item before the existing option tag. I am defining the value attribute of the option tag as empty string. I am including select status as the content of the option tag. As per HTML standard, if user selects this option, then this field becomes invalid as its value is empty string and the select tag is defined with the required attribute. If we look into the email field, we included two-way data binding and template reference variable to implement validation. In a similar way, I am going to include two-way data binding and template reference variable for the status drop-down element. I am including ng model with two-way data binding, then as value I am including user.status similar to how we included user.email for the email input element. After this, I am including the template reference variable named as hash status field with value as ng model. After the submit button, I am including a div tag to display the validation status of the drop-down list. The label is going to be status drop-down valid, then including the interpolation with status field dot valid. Let me now save and check how it works after the change is made. After the page reload, if we look into the status drop-down list, it is blank and valid status of the drop-down list is true. We want status as mandatory field, but this behavior will make the form to submit even if status is not selected, which makes it an important issue that needs to be addressed. We will resolve this issue later in this video. In the meantime, we will examine how select element currently works. If I select the first option, select status from the drop-down, then valid becomes false. This works as expected since the value of this option is empty string. If I select any other entry from the drop-down list, we can see valid becoming true. Now we will examine the scenario when the drop-down list is blank. To recreate the scenario, I am reloading the page. After the page reload, the status drop-down list is blank and it is valid. Let me try to demonstrate the reason for this behavior. In app.component.ts, in the user object constructor, for the first parameter name, I am changing the empty string to have some name. I am saving the file. After the page reload, we can see that the name field is pre-populated with the name provided in the constructor. As two-way data binding is defined for the name input text element, it gets the data from the component property and applies the value in the element. In a similar fashion, let us see how it will work for select drop-down list. Let me go to app.component.ts where the user object is created using constructor. We saw how the name included here was getting pre-populated in the name input text element. But when it comes to select element, it needs to be implemented in a different way. Let me demonstrate how to do that. As the third parameter of the constructor, I am clearing the new object creation and then including statuses followed by square brackets containing the index number 1. Here, statuses represents the status array object defined in status.ts. The index 1 represents the second element employed. In app.component.html, I am going to include a new attribute for the option element. In the option tag, I am including ngValue directive with square brackets. ngValue is a new directive that we are using from forms module. As value of ngValue directive, I am including status. Here, status refers to the variable defined in the ngIf directive. This directive helps to automatically make an option pre-selected based on the two-way data binding. So the expectation is that employed status object is assigned in the constructor, hence employed option should get selected in the dropdown. Let me save both the files and check how this works. After the page reload, we can see the second element employed selected by default in the status dropdown list. I am changing the index number as 2 and saving the file. After the page reload, we can see the third item pre-selected in the status dropdown list. In app.component.ts, let me revert back the code to have a new status object created with id as 0 and name as empty string. In this case, for this status object, there is no matching entry in the drop-down list, hence it cannot select an item from the drop-down list and it makes the display as blank. For this blank element, the value will not be an empty string, hence valid property is true. Hope this explanation helps you understand how a blank field is getting selected and how it makes valid property as true. To overcome this behavior, we need to prevent Angular from assigning value to the drop-down list. This can be achieved by removing the two-way data binding. Once the two-way data binding is removed, assignment of value from the component will not happen, which will make the first element to be displayed. I am clearing the two-way data binding by removing the square brackets and the normal brackets around the ngModel directive. As we have removed two-way data binding, there is no necessity to define to which property in the component needs to be bound, so the attribute value user.status can also be removed. We need to retain the ngModel directive, only then status field template reference variable can be assigned with ngModel. For now, the ngValue directive is not required, hence I am removing the attribute from the option tag. We will need this directive again for another purpose, which will be demonstrated in the next video. In app.component.ts, the name included in the constructor can be cleared back to empty string. After this change, ngModel directive will not try to find a matching entry to select, hence the first entry select status will get displayed, for which the value is empty string, which will make the drop-down list as invalid. Let us see how these changes work. I am saving the file. After the page reload, I can see the first option select status is displayed. Also notice valid is now false as the first option element value is empty string. If I select an item from the drop-down list other than the first option, we can see valid changing to true. Now that we have got the valid property of ngModel working as expected, we can implement the code to display the validation error message. From the email validation implementation, I am copying the ngClass attribute and pasting it in a new line for the select tag. Then I am copying the error div tag of email and pasting it after the div tag of the drop-down list. The pattern validation message is not required, hence removing that line. Then I am copying the template reference variable status field. I am going to replace all the email field to status field in ngClass and ngIf directive of the select element. Then changing the validation error message by clearing the existing message and replacing the message as select a status. Finally, to display red outline for validation errors, we need to make changes in app.component.css. Currently, the red outline is applied for input element, which needs to be applied for select element as well. I am copying both the selectors that starts with input, then including a comma. In a new line, I am pasting the selectors and changing input to select for both of the selectors. With this, all necessary changes for validation of status drop-down list is completed. I am saving all the files to test if validation works as expected. First, we will test if touched property validation is working correctly. I am clicking on the drop-down list, then selecting the first item, then clicking outside the drop-down list. We can see validation error message displayed with the red outline. So, touched property validation is working correctly. Next, we will test for dirty property validation. Now, if I select a status from the drop-down, then the validation error message is not displayed. Again, if I select the first item from the drop-down list, we can see the message displayed with red outline. So, dirty property is also working correctly. Next, we will test form submission. I am reloading the page using the reload icon in the browser. Now, I am directly clicking on the submit button without selecting any status. We can see the error message and red outline displayed in the select drop-down list and for all other elements. We have tested all the validation error scenarios and it is working correctly. This means that we have successfully completed the validation for status select element. Let me summarize the changes to be done. In app.component.html, include required attribute to make the select element as mandatory. Include ng model directive without two-way data binding, then include template reference variable followed by this ng class attribute. Within the select tag, include a new option tag as the first item. Include this error div tag for displaying the validation error message. Include this div tag after the submit button to display the valid status of the select element. In app.component.css, include the selectors for the drop-down list. Save all the files and check if validation works for all the scenarios I demonstrated earlier. In the next video, we will see how to convert the form data into JSON for form submission.